Hey everyone, Corbin Hostler back this week with another modern deck. And this week we have a deck you may remember from the stream a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, but we played against this deck. It's a mono red token deck, and we just had no idea what was going on. Our opponent played a bunch of tokens and cast a Haze of Rage and killed us. And I was like, I have to know what this is. I have to know what this is. So I actually reached out to our opponent in that game, said, please send me your list, send me your email. I would love to give you credit for it. So he did. He sent me his list. Sent me a little write-up, which I included in the article portion of this on TCGplayer, that you should definitely go check out when you get an opportunity. So this is what we got from him. His original list was just a couple cards different than this, and he didn't have the probes or the Manamorphos, which he said was an online thing, and he would ideally have them. If you'll remember, he had Monastery Swift Sphere and Founder's Shoot Denizen. So we've gone with what his optimal list would be. And this is what we have. It's actually a pretty insane deck. If you'll remember back to Avacyn Restored Standard, if you've been playing since then, there's this weird quirky combo red deck with Burn at the Stake. Now what this does is it's 5 mana. You tap any number of untapped creatures you control. You do damage to a target creature or player equal to 3 times the number of tokens tapped this way. So you make a bunch of tokens, you get to 5 mana, you tap them, you kill them, right? That's the plan. So how are we going to do that? This is the deck, and this deck is absurd. One of the screenshots I grabbed the other day, I was up to like 300 mana, and I was looping a buyback card. Storm count was 55, and Magic Online was taking so long to run through what I was doing. I actually ran out of time on my clock long before I ran out of mana. So, all right, let me walk you through the deck. Burn at the Stake is one of our 2 win conditions. I guess one of 3. It can just deal a bunch of damage to tokens. Haze of Rage is the other one. Now, this is a Storm card with buyback of 2. Creatures you control get +1/+0. So if we get our Storm count to 5 or something, we cast it for 4 mana, well, now our creatures get +5/+0, and then we can buy it back, and we cast it again, at which point another spell's been cast, so Storm is 6, and then they get 6 or 7, whatever, and they get really big. And you do a lot of damage to the tokens. So those are the 2 win conditions we have. Everything else in the deck is set up to make those things happen. So, what that means, you have to have mana in the deck, and this is the best mana-producing ritual that is legal in Modern, in this deck at least. This is how we make all of our mana. Yeah, Storm can make a bunch of mana, and normal Storm can go up to, arbitrary large amounts of mana, 40, 50, something like that, when they need it. But their rituals can never, ever go from more than 2 mana to 3 mana. When they have Pyromancer's Ascension, sure, it goes from 2 to 6 or whatever. This starts. I've made 100 mana with this card before. So 1 red mana for each creature you control. That's number 1 ritual. Number 2 ritual is Infernal Plunge, which is the only ritual left in Modern that takes you from 1 mana to 3 mana, because Rite of Flame was banned. So this is also very interesting, and when we're making a bunch of tokens, sacrificing a creature is not that hard of a cost to pay. So, making tokens. Dragon Fodder. 2 tokens for 2 mana. Krinkos Command is a 5th Dragon Fodder. Hordeling Outburst. 3 tokens for 3 mana. Young Pyromancer. All kinds of tokens. This deck just goes off with Young Pyromancer. You can even play it, of course it can be removed and you don't make as many tokens, but remember, we only need a lot of times to get to 6 tokens in play, and then we can cast Burn at the Stake and win. So you can, even if they kill this, you can maybe get a Get Probe immediately, something like that. So you can make the tokens you need to make it work. So those are our token makers. We make a lot of tokens with the deck. We also have ways to speed the deck up. Faithless Looting draws us what I need. Lets us pitch stuff to our graveyard, like our Pass and Flames, which we can flash back later to give all our spells flashback. Manamorphos, it's a spell. You have these big Pyromancer turns where you just loop 2 or 3 spells, and you make a bunch of tokens, and you're ready to win the next turn. Manamorphos is great with that. Gitaxian Probe. You can pay on turn 2. You can play a Pyromancer, then pay 2 life to make a token. Sometimes you get later in the game and you're trying to go off with the deck, and you have a young Pyromancer, and you play Gitaxian Probe and make a token. And go from there. And it doesn't even matter if they have a Lightning Bolt, because you get something out of it, Plus, it just cycles in the early game. Reforge the Soul. Let's talk about this one. It's a Winds of Change, or whatever the Windfall, whatever the original Wheel of Fortune. There you go. But you discard your hand and you draw 7. So 5 mana to do so, but it also has a miracle cost of 2. So sometimes you make tokens that on turn 3 or 4 you just do this, you draw 7 cards, now you've got rituals, you're ready to go off. Or you just make a bunch of mana, and then you 5 mana to draw a new hand of 7 to keep going off. Is not that hard to do. And then the final piece of the puzzle here is increasing vengeance. This is actually a really interesting one, but sometimes very important. You copy target instant or sorcery you control, and if it was cast from your graveyard, you copy it twice instead and has a flashback cost of 5. So I've had games where I had 4 mana and I need to try to go off. I need to make a bunch of mana to flashback a Pass in Flames, something like that. And I've cast Battle Hymn with like a young Pyromancer in play or something. And, you know, the Battle Hymn goes on the stack, Pyromancer makes you a token. You hold priority, you use Increasing Vigilance to copy Battle Hymn. It makes another token from the Pyromancer. So then they both resolve, and even if you only had a Pyromancer in play, you end up with 6 mana out of that 4 mana, which is enough to flashback your Pass in Flames for the 5, and then Infernal Plunge, etc., and sort of go off from there. So that's the deck. It's nuts. You think it looks so jank, and I mean, I'm not going to tell you this is a tier 1 deck or anything like that, but you just sometimes make like 1,000 mana. It's really absurd. So moving on to the sideboard. Shattering Spree for your artifact matchups. You know, Lantern, Affinity, obviously, that sort of thing. Crumble to Dust for Tron. Relic Virginitas for the graveyard decks. And Defense Grid for the combo decks. Or counterspell decks, rather. 3 more to cast spells, except on your own turn. We almost always are only cast spells on our own turn, so this wrecks the counterspell decks pretty hard. And then Gutshot. It's for another Phyrexian card. 1, it's great against Mana Dorks and Affinity and things like that. But 2, it's another card where if we have a young Pyromancer in play, we can pay 2 life and immediately go off with it. And it's something against like Infect, this is pretty important. So that's the deck. This deck is absurd to play. It looks so crazy and just like it'll never ever work. And we'll see if it actually does work, but in the testing, it has done it. So I'm definitely looking forward to showing you guys this deck.